What's up guys, and welcome back to my dungeon. The video of today is about building this budget gaming system, from the unboxing to the operating system. This guide is intended for complete beginners, so if you don't know where to start or you're afraid to break something, don't worry, I will show you every step of the process in detail. So, let's get started. To do this in a professional way, you need a pocket army knife and some tweezers. No, definitely not. You don't need the army knife. You need a Phillips screwdriver, medium to large, for the chassis and the PSU and the stock cooler, and a small Phillips screwdriver for the NVMe drive. The first thing I suggest you to do is to unbox the components and check them before installing them inside the chassis. Let's start with the motherboard. This is a very simple motherboard, but well, is everything you need for this type of system, since it supports all generation of Ryzens from the first since the last one as today, and probably even the next one. You will find here, let's go into the close-up, the motherboard, of course, and the I/O shield. Those are the two main pieces that you're going to need today. The box of the motherboard now is very useful, since I usually pre-test all the components and see if I have a boot, everything is fine, before actually putting them inside the chassis. This is very important because if you have any issue or if you have to reset the BIOS, you can just do it here without putting your hands inside the chassis, or end up removing the components and then putting them back. So you probably save time to do this way. So now what I'm going to do is to unbox the I/O shield, and let's put it here for later. We don't need that. Okay, first thing first, let's start with the CPU. The Ryzen 5 1600AF, it comes with the fan, so you have everything you need inside the box. The CPU and the stock cooler. The stock cooler for a basic use is more than okay. Then you can upgrade it for an air cooler, an AO, or something better, but honestly, for a budget gaming build, is everything you need. It's not noisy, and you can even overclock it. So here we have our fan, our cooler, and the CPU. Let's start with the CPU. The CPU have pins, so you have to carefully remove it with your fingers and place it to the socket. There's a sign here, there's an arrow. You have to put it into the right direction, and then you have to make sure that it fits without actually using too much force. If the CPU will fit nicely, you can see as well the Ryzen logo in this direction. If everything is inside, gently pull this one and you're okay. So fitting the CPU is very easy if you know how to do it. If you feel that something is not right, don't force it. Check again, because if you put the CPU in the wrong direction, you will notice that it doesn't fit. So it's pretty easy. Just put it nicely to the socket, and everything is fine. Pull this one back. Okay, now that we have the CPU placed, we can place the RAM stick. I use these components in my previous video. I made 2 videos about that, so you can see benchmark and the pre-testing. I suggest you to check that video later, or just stop this video, check the other one video, and then come back. I'm using the Ballistix Sport LT, 2666 MHz. Is a 8 GB kit, so this is pretty cheap. You can find it in Amazon for like $30 to $40, and is everything we need for a budget gaming system. The RAM as well have only way to be inserted into the RAM socket, so you cannot go wrong. Just put it nicely until you hear the click. Okay, repeat the process. That's it, and the RAM is placed. Now let's go with the NVMe drive. Why an NVMe? This is the crucial P1 500 GB. Is a bit more expensive than a SATA drive, but you're talking about $10 to $15 or 10 to 15 euros, which is not too much considering this is much faster. And honestly, the $10 to $15 or euro are well spent, since nowadays you can use this system also for editing video, or just to load the games a bit faster. And the difference is not too much. I mean, if you have to save some dollars or some euros, you can go for a SATA drive. But, well, my advice, spend 10 now, 15 now, and you are good to go for the next years. Now, with a small screwdriver, you have to remove this screw here, or if it's not here, I don't remember, maybe you can find a small bag inside the motherboard with the screw. So you remove the screw carefully. Again, nothing can go wrong here, since there's only one way you can place this thing. So just you put it here, you hear a click, you take your screw, you hold him back like this, hold him down like this. Well, you place the screw without pushing too much, and that's it. We have our hard drive plugged into the motherboard. Next step is the cooler. Now, if you want to use the stock cooler, you have to remove those plastic brackets, since as probably you noticed, it can't fit. This is mainly for the higher end cooler, like the 8 cores, but no problem, since you take your Phillips screwdriver and you remove the plastics. So again, it's something that is very easy. So if you see the cooler doesn't fit, don't panic, just remove the plastics. Here we are. Save it for later, because if you change the stock cooler for an aftermarket, sometimes you have to use that system. So now that we have everything ready to place the stock cooler, in my case I have to replace the thermal paste. If you have the stock cooler as it is, it comes with a bit of thermal paste, but you can use that. So now, applying the thermal paste, I want to show you something. Many people say you have to put like a small rice grain inside here, but honestly, I don't know if you can see it, that is not the right amount, since, as I can show you here, if you place the cooler and you remove it, this is the area that actually the paste spread. This is not enough, since everything gets hot. If you place only a small amount of thermal paste, some areas will left with air and doesn't really dissipate the right amount. So my suggestion instead is to place like 5 small rice grains. The correct amount is the amount, or 5 or 6 or 7, depends. Just put a bit of thermal paste like this. Now I think you can see it. The goal is to form I think it's better if I show you. So if you place the cooler with that amount and then you remove the cooler, now you see that the area of the paste is larger. So you need a larger area. What you don't want is to place too much thermal paste, and the thermal paste doesn't really affect your performance, but you end up all in the motherboard and, well, it's a mess. So if you do it, nothing to worry about, but I mean, it's ugly. So place the right amount, enough to cover almost all the area of the CPU without having the thermal paste going into the motherboard and covering other components. So now you place the stock cooler like this, and you start with the screwdriver to push it back. So I suggest you to do like one turn here, a couple of turns here, and then again the other, a couple of turns here, and here as well. You don't need to go heavy. Probably is like 5 to 7 turns each. Check if everything is into their side. And here you have it. Motherboard with a cooler. And now we have to connect this cable so the fan can actually work. I usually do something like this to keep the cable a bit shorter. Here you can see CPU fan. Usually is in this area or in this area. So it's very easy to find. If you don't find it, check the motherboard manual. And here we have our base motherboard installed. Okay, now we have the main part ready. So we can put it here for a moment and unbox the other components. For the PSU, I'm using a Cooler Master MWE bronze 450 watts. Those watts are more than enough because you don't need a lot of watts, you need good watts. And this is the version 2, so you have to check for this model, but the version 2 is an improved version and actually is a very nice PSU, and you can find it around $50. So it's cheap, it uses the latest technology, and is powerful enough for a medium to high-end discrete graphics card. Once again, in the package you find only everything you need, nothing special inside. So we have the PSU, is not modular, so as you can see all the cables are attached here, and well, it's not an issue since we can put the cables behind and still maintain a good aesthetics. Now it's time to test if everything is working properly. So you connect this big one here until it clicks. There's only one way to put it, so don't worry. And then we have another connector here. So again, you find the right one. Usually is written in the PSU something like CPU, like this. If you see an 8-pin connector, just you can just use one, so 4 pin. Some motherboard have 4, some motherboard have 8, and some motherboard even 16. But in this case, this PSU with this motherboard is more than okay. So you place everything from the PSU to the motherboard, then the graphics card. Just place the motherboard just on the edge, and you plug the GPU inside again until it clicks. Then you have to take the power for the graphics card. I have an RX 570. This is a very nice 1080p gaming card. I think now is like €130 or $130. Very nice price performance. So you plug in the power connector for the GPU, and you have pretty much the system built. So okay, we have to put it in the case, but now for the test, this is fine. So you check the power cord, you plug the power cord, but don't hit the switch yet. Then you plug the keyboard, your mouse, and of course the monitor. Now it's time to power up the system you just built. And the first thing you have to do before turning on the switch is to check your motherboard's manual and see where is the power pin connector. Usually is on this side. Check the 2 pins that are marked for power. And when you find it, take the manual and set it aside. You will need it later. So you switch on, and with your screwdriver you short the 2 pin marked as power, and you will have the system with lights and the fan spinning. Now you check your monitor. If everything is fine, you should be able to enter the BIOS. If not, well, check again every step and make sure everything is connected properly. Check the cables and check if every component is placed in the right position. So now that you are into the BIOS, before mounting everything into the chassis, I suggest you to set your memory with the XMP profile. The best thing to do is to go into the advanced menu, OC, and here in XMP profile, select the profile that is best for your system, or that is in line with the memory you just purchased. In my case, it's profile number 2, 266 MHz. So you just set the XMP profile, F10, save and exit. Now the system will reboot, and you will probably see, as I'm seeing now, in a couple of seconds I will show you in the video. Okay, as you can see, the keyboard's turned on, the BIOS is showing the startup, and since we don't have the operating system, here we are. We have this message, reboot and select proper boot device, but this is something that we'll cover later on. So now, at this point, you have to turn off the system. You just turn off the switch and you disassemble everything except the NVMe drive, the memory and the CPU. So you will carefully remove the power of the GPU, the video connector, you push gently the plastic here, you remove the GPU, and then all the cables. Don't apply too much force, you will risk to break something, so go gently. And here you have again your motherboard, ready to be fitted inside the chassis. Now is finally time to work on the chassis. The first thing you have to do is to remove the side panels. Okay, now we have to install the PSU. As you can see here, we have a metal support for the PSU, so we have to remove it, install the support in the PSU, and then we can put it and screw it in the case. Before installing the PSU in the metal support, check the position. Now that we have the support installed on the PSU, we position the PSU inside. Carefully watch out for the cables. Check if everything is fine. And use the 4 screw that we set aside earlier. Now it's time to think about cable management. So you have some cables that from the chassis are going to be connected to the motherboard. So I suggest you to put those cables inside here, at least for now. And then, on the contrary, you have to put all those cables from the PSU behind the motherboard. Like this. So at this point, we have the cables from the chassis that goes inside in the motherboard direction, and all the PSU cable here. Let's start with the 24-pin cable, the big one. This is for the motherboard. So we put it into this hole. Keep in mind that this is the motherboard and it's going in this direction. So we have the 24-pin connector here and a 4-pin power connector here that is going exactly here. With that in mind, we need to find this one. As you can see, is written CPU. CPU is the small one in the upper part of the motherboard. So you can check the sides to do a clean job. And you put, there's a hole, of course, because they know that the motherboard needs that connector. And you do like this. So you prepare this connector to go here. Now, of course, we need to supply the power for the graphics card. And I think that at least for now, we can put it here in this hole. Then we can change it later. It's just to give a shape, to prepare the cable. Check that everything is aligned, that it doesn't look ugly at the end. And then here we have some SATA Molex connector. We have SATA and Molex connector, but for this specific build, we don't have the CD-ROM. Well, it's something that is old right now, and we don't have any SATA drive. We don't need that. So we are going to now see that we have a cable that is pushing other cable. We want to avoid that. So if you find this situation, just follow the cables, and it's better to sort this thing out now. Okay, now that we have all the cables that are free, there's no tension. For now, we are going to put this cable like this here, and then later we are going to fix that. So for now, we leave the cable like this. Well, if you want, in the here we are. There's a bag with zip ties. Someone that called that tweezers, but I'm pretty sure the name is zip tie. So you can do something like this. Just to keep them out of the way. And then we will work on that later. So we have our cable, everything is in place. It's not so ugly. Now it's time to fit the motherboard inside. So let's go to the other side. All right. As you can see, we have the small one, the GPU connector that we're going to fit here, the cable for the motherboard from the chassis, and the big one, the 24 pin for the motherboard. Now, I had to put some screw in the base of the chassis, in the side panel. So check if you have everything to mount correctly your motherboard. So look at those holes here, here, here. Usually they are like 6, at least with this format. Check if you are missing something, and if something is missing, check in that bag, and probably is inside here. So I already checked, and I had to add like 3 small screw, and now I'm ready to fit the motherboard inside. One thing you want to do is to connect the cable, at least the cable that you can do, before putting the motherboard inside. The easiest one is this one. So the 4-pin connector. Then click, and we have it. Okay. So now everything is very easy. HD audio usually is written on the board. In this case, is here. J out 1 is like the Lego bricks. Literally, you can't go wrong. Now we have the USB, this one, which is here. If you find that it is uncomfortable, just put the motherboard here and push it. Now you have to connect the reset switch, the power switch, the power LED, and the HD LED. Again, check your manual. Here you have everything that is written on the pin here, so check carefully. Now the 24 pin connector that goes right here. Okay, now that we have everything connected, it's time for the I/O shield. Some people want to install it before the motherboard. I usually put the motherboard on a side and do it right now, just in case, it's hard to misplace this, because it's like before. It's like a Lego brick. There's only one way one direction. But just in case, since probably if you're doing this for the first time, it's easy to put this on the wrong direction, and well, this is easy. So you check before, like this. You try to fit the IO shield here, so you know that is in the right direction, and then you push it into the hole. Be careful because this is very thin, and you can cut your fingers. All right, now we set the motherboard inside, check everything is well placed, like this. And now we can start with the screws. Now that you have secured the motherboard, it's time to connect the rear fan. Fortunately, with this motherboard, it's very easy. I don't know if you can see it. Here we have the connector, and right where the cable is. Okay, so now that we have our rear fan plugged in, it's time to install the graphics card. Again, there's a metal support to remove here. And now you have to push this piece of metal, again carefully, because this can cut your fingers, and trust me, when a piece of metal like this cut your finger, it's going to hurt. So now we have our RX 570, and most important, don't do the mistake that I just did. So I removed the wrong piece of metal, so now there's going to be a hole there, and I have to take another one. My bad. So okay, we have the graphics card like before. Check if it's properly mounted and click. We have 2 screws, but first use the bracket, the metal bracket again, and then the 2 screws. Now it's time to connect our GPU with the power cable. And we will take care of this cable later. We're almost done. Once in a while, check everything. If there's something that doesn't seem right, okay, now that we are on this side, we saw that the cable aren't that bad. We have everything in place. I suggest you to use a zip tie here and to fix those cables. Okay, so it's not that bad. Now we can place the side panels. To finish the job, I put a zip tie here in those cables with the result that is pretty clean. It's not like a super high-end build with custom loop and bells and whistles, but honestly, for $500 or euro more or less, it looks pretty nice. If I turn it on, as you can see, well, there's no RGB, but it does the job. And you can always do some upgrade in the future. Now we are ready to install the operating system, but this is a topic for another video, so I can show you some tricks that can save you some time. As always, if you have any question, you can drop a comment down below or you can join my Discord server. Like the video if you like it, don't forget to subscribe and see you in the next one.